Chapter 2. Splat! She was standing on the edge of my windowsill and giving me the eye. Not a pleasant eye, either. She appeared to be checking me for parasites and worms. And I stood looking back at her like salmon looks at bait. She was dazzling, all right. A real heart-stopping beauty with a long, fluffy tail. Silver, like the kind of stuff they used to line clouds with. As perfectly graceful as the shadow of a lark. I jumped to my chair and got the fish look off my face. "Uh-huh," I said. "So you're the little sister, I presume?" She nodded. "So you want to come in and have a seat?" "I don't know," she said, lifting up her head to look around. "There's a fly on your ceiling." He wasn't there for long. The little buzzer took one quick look at that honey, and he didn't have a chance. It was beautiful to see. He came off of that ceiling like a half-drunken acrobat, circling and spiraling and diving through the air, till he crashed against the window pane and landed at her feet. "Yuck," she said daintily, by way of an epitaph, a sentiment that made me feel sorry for the fly. He was, after all, just another fellow creature, half hunter, half lover, and he'd killed himself for love. She lifted her eyes again and browsed me for a while. Then she sighed and half shivered. "I suppose you'll have to do." "Do what?" I said testily. "Go after him, of course." She leapt from the windowsill and landed on the desk. "When Mrs. Angelhoff—" "Wait," I said. "Hold it. Roll it back. To begin with, what's your name?" "Antoinette," she said primly. "It's my stage name, of course." "You're an actress?" "Not yet. I take classes at the Cat Actors Studio," she said. "But at the moment I'm a model. You might have seen my picture in the carpet cleaner ad, or for snag-proof pantyhose, or Dr. Katz's marmalade, or Soft Scrubbers soap." "I must have missed that," I mumbled. "That's impossible," she said. "They've been everywhere, really. I get asked for my potograph everywhere I go." "Uh-huh," I said. I wasn't very interested in that. An actress's ego, I've discovered, can be something like a pigeon on the roof. You can hit it with a broomstick, or offer it a breadstick, but once you start feeding it, it never goes away, and the question is, do you want a pigeon on your roof? I didn't, so I settled back and swiveled in my chair and said, "You mentioned a Mrs. Angelhoff." "Oh," she said, "yes. Mrs. Angelhoff's our manager. I mean, she gets Sandy all his cat slop commercials, and she also works for me. And then we live with her, of course." "Go on." "So I'm sitting there," she pointed at the windowsill of Kitten Caboodle, "all slathery and slippery and sleek with shampoo, and Mrs. Angelhoff telephones. She telephones Harry and she tells him she'll be late. It's a terrible, terrible emergency, she says, because Sandy's disappeared." I frowned and looked up. "Disappeared?" I said. "What do you mean by disappeared?" "Took a powder, I suppose. He was acting in his 50 millionth cat-slop commercial, and the way I understand it, there were 3 scenes to go, and then poof! No Sandy. The director looked everywhere. The actors looked everywhere. And then Mrs. Angelhoff was screaming through the neighborhood and poking into trash." "No Sandy," I offered. "No Sandy," she agreed. She scratched at her shoulder blade and tossed her pretty head. "I'm gonna murder him," she said. "I'm serious. I'm really gonna wring his furry neck." I squinted. "Well, he's just being difficult," she said. "He's probably off playing monster in the alley. Or maybe he's got a little girlfriend on the block. And meanwhile I'm stranded here at Kitten Caboodle. It's a boarding house as well as a beauty shop, you know. And if nobody rescues me, I'll have to stay the night." "I see," I said. "You're not too concerned about Sandy." "Well, of course not," she said. "I'm concerned about myself. I mean, Kitten Caboodle is a nice place to visit, but the overnight facilities are, well," she said sniply, "the plaza, it ain't. And besides, I've never slept without my own pretty blanket and my little fuzzy bear. Fuzzy bear, I said. Right. I've got one other question. How long has he been missing? She shrugged. Mrs. Angelhoff called at 6:11, and apparently she said he'd been missing for an hour. I glanced at the clock again. 6:57. All right, I said decisively. It's time to get to work.